I am unashamed. What about you?
3, 2, 1. We're live.
I can't even, that was a fake countdown. I can't even
I just
respond to that.
I'm looking at that coffee over there. We've already decided if you're watching the podcast.
Because we're in the afternoon. We're out of our element.
It's out of our element.
This may be the first time in the history of this show that we've ever done a podcast in the afternoon.
There haven't been many.
So we had Shane and Shane on a few podcasts ago.
Yeah.
Well, here's what's funny is, Al, I did one of their shows. They do a daily devotional or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Did you sing?
Oh, I sung. Yeah, and Missy was in charge of it. If you would have filmed behind the scenes of that.
Oh, this is when she went choir teacher on them.
She went choir teacher. Because they said, teach us the song, but I knew they didn't realize what that meant. Because here, I mean, they're pretty world-class singers. My wife is in charge. You're fixing to do what she says. She all but slapped him on the hand and said, we're going to sing this song this way. And they kept trying to interject.
She said, that's good. Listen. Listen.
She said, quit playing the guitar and listen. Because they were
Hold on,
trying
we're breaking
to
the
find
fourth wall.
notes.
We're breaking the fourth wall. We all want to come out.
A shot of that, Al.
Yeah, we all got coffee coming.
So it was fun, but so I used the same illustration to them. And I said, because I said, look, I think this is great that y'all have invited us to sing one of your devos, and Missy's going to teach you a song, and we sang it a cappella. The whole funny part of it wasn't that she wanted to sing the song a cappella, and they usually have instruments. It was the fact that this song was created for 4 parts of harmony to mesh at the end. It's like that is the power of the song.
Love one another?
Yeah,
Or
love
Greatest
one another.
Commandments, what it's called.
Which I didn't know that her mom
wrote one of the parts.
Yeah.
She
I did not
wrote
know
it.
that.
Well, that's when I realized why she was just being very direct. She was like, yeah, her mom wrote a part of it. So then they got real quiet. You know, it was so funny to me. I was laughing so hard because she was all business. And, you know, you're doing this off the top of your head, and they didn't know the song. And I'm like, what could go wrong? A lot. So what I told them, I said, you can always do the Andy Griffith philosophy on this, which none of them had seen that. So then I started questioning their salvation in the singing business. Because I said, what, you haven't seen that?
And they had a lot of episodes around them singing in a choir.
Exactly.
Which was really cool.
Well, the choir director, my favorite line of that Andy Griffith episode, when he would go meet with Andy, and he was like, but Andy, he can't sing. Because he was like, it's going to break his heart. But Andy, he can't sing. And so they go do the mic test, and they convinced him that the mic was so sensitive that the softer he sang, the better it would sound.
And then they had Gomer Powell outside the window.
No, it wasn't. It was just some guy who was not a normal.
That was good TV.
That was good
He
TV.
comes out with this booming voice, and Barney was.
And Barney thinks it's him.
You see, he swells up with pride because it was just, you know, booming, you know, and it's like everybody. So I was like, well, we'll do that. I was like, I'll sing so soft because the problem this whole thing was it's a 4-part harmony.
But Zach, he can't sing.
That's what I kept saying. I was like,
the line you got to hang on to.
Missy said, Jase will sing the bass, and I said, hang on here, alone. I kept saying, alone? And so one of their guys who was just a grip guy for Shane and Shane, he's like, I actually know this song.
Oh, yeah.
And I said,
he grew up in the Church of Christ.
I said, well, sing.
New harmony.
I said, sing with me softly because I just need someone
to lead.
I need
but
to
Zach,
hear it.
He can't sing.
That's good.
And so I'm nervous about when it comes out because it's the bass. But you know what's funny? We had this whole argument because Reed, my son, was there who can sing the telephone book.
Oh, yeah.
But he was doing the tenor part. But the tenor part comes later. So actually,
you really have to sing to do the
actually, Reed started off with me on the bass because it comes a little later.
Right.
And so it actually worked out. I mean, I'm sure I hit a bad note or two in there, but just full disclosure. But
I've listened to it.
What did you think?
I thought it sounded great.
Well, how was the bass?
The bass was. I'm telling you, I was. Jase, you can sing.
Well, that song my dad really loved, which is why we did it. And
it's one of my favorites.
We've sung it so many times.
Oh my goodness! Yeah.
Years ago, when we sang it at WFR, we went through an era where we sang it, and they would always have us hold hands across the aisles, which was always awkward to me. But it was so loved by the church that it was.
Well, if you grew up in the Church of Christ, it's like a let me know you grew up in the Church of Christ without telling me. Well, just sing that song, and you know that you grew up in the Church of Christ.
Anything with 4-part harmony.
I went to Harding University, which is a Church of Christ school. Pepperdine is one where your kids went. Abilene Christian, but at all
Lipscomb
in Chapel, we would sing that song with 4,000 students, and it was like, whoo.
Yeah, it's very touching, and it was great at the at Dad's celebration service. I thought it sounded.
Yeah, he loved it.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's with all the chaos of life, and you always have family disagreements and all that. There was just always something about that song when you sing with other people, and it was just voices. It's like, okay, it's a reset here.
Yeah,
we got to love one another.
Yeah,
and things happen, and so that's why that song means a lot to me. I love that song, and you conclude Jesus was right again.
Yeah, greatest
love
commandment.
God, love your neighbor, which is another.
How many times did Dad say that?
Yeah.
Love God, love your neighbor. He would.
Yeah.
Well, then he would
give it a try for crying out loud.
No, he would say, "Give me a break.
Give me a break."
So
he always did that whistle thing too.
Yeah. Say he would always do that when he was like making a joke. Yeah. Next time we get Willie on here. And just help me remember, Maddie, that we need to do a revival. Speaking of revival, of Willie doing Dad reading the church bulletin.
Oh, that was
well. You have to set it up though, because Phil
that was a classic.
He went through
an era.
What? No, I'm trying to think of the Christianese language that Zach used all the time. A season. He went through a season of life. He said that on the last podcast, and I did my eye roll.
Jase is rolling his eyes. You don't like the word? You don't like that term? You think it's Christianese?
I wrote a book called A New Season.
I think somebody in a meeting one time decided to categorize everything.
All the leaves are brown,
and it's like I'm going through this season right now. I just don't like it.
You're so cynical, but part of me receives it because I think I know what you're saying, and
because you've got a couple of cynical bones in your body. By the way,
it's like just call it a season. I can't stand it.
It does seem a little pretentious.
Most of the times, though, when people say that, it's coming from the outfit thing that became a thing in churches, where everybody started wearing these weird get-ups, and then everybody's wearing the same. They got like high-top tennis shoes.
Oh, no, and there was the elf boots and the hat and the little vest.
And I'm like, you look like you're going camping. Or when the tennis shoe phase comes, I got a high top tennis shoe. I was like, what's he going to do? Dunk a basketball and make an illustration somewhere in it? No, it's just like the look.
I would walk into green room after green room after green room, and everybody would look the same. The hat, it was like a little.
Oh, I did like 5 events in a row where when I shook the pastor's hand, he literally had the same get up as the guy 5 states over that I just did an event. And after the 5th one, I just said, look, you need to consider your wardrobe. I was like, all of y'all look the same.
I would always look at myself and I said, I didn't get the memo that this was what we're supposed to wear.
Somewhere in all this, because Zach was, what church I was raised in. I mean, I was raised in a bar, and I'm actually kind of thankful for it because I missed all the seasons and the Christianese and what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to dress.
That was your bar season. You were just in the season of bars.
I'm just saying.
That was your bar season.
I really think the church is a movement of people where the body of Christ, we're supposed to move on the planet and be authentic. And I just think once you kind of get to a building and you feel like you got to wear the same like fashion to identify yourself with certain groups, we missed it. I mean, I think the verse says when we're Galatians 3, we put on Christ.
Yeah. Have you heard of that? Have you heard of the Instagram page called Preacher Sneakers?
I have. We actually talked about this on the podcast.
Have we talked about this?
All they do, I think I brought it up because we had a guy on who didn't we have the guy on that does that site? I've met him somewhere.
He's from
I
here.
don't think it was here.
Well, I met him somewhere.
He's from.
But all he does
he's
is
from Ruston.
he puts on the prices of like shoes or outfits that preachers wear.
Yeah.
That's what he does.
Oh,
And
really?
he doesn't preach a sermon. He's just like this pastor, and he's like he has all the arrows pointing.
He'll put
It'll be
a
like
link to. He'll put like a screenshot of like the pastor. They'll have this like his whole outfit, and it'll be like the sneakers like $900. The
exactly.
jeans, $2,000. It'll have the whole, and you're looking at it, you're like, whoa.
So you guys know how much we love The Chosen here on the Unashamed podcast. Season 5 is now streaming on Prime Video. Dallas Jenkins, of course, is the creator. He's a great friend of our podcast. And Jase, he's become a great friend, he and his wife, of you and Missy.
He is. We were fans of The Chosen. Then we had him on the podcast, and we became really good friends. And I went to the season 5 premiere. Also went to the season 4 premiere, and I'm happy to announce that it's out on Prime Video.
So in this season, the final hours are approaching, and here's their description of it, and I love it. It says, loyalties will be tested, pushed to the edge of faith and trust. Friendships will be questioned, challenged, and shaken by uncertainty and doubt. Alliances will be broken, families will be divided, and nothing will ever be the same again. It's a journey of faith, doubt, hope, transformation, and love. Experience the incredible story of one unforgettable night that changed the course of history forever. And we all know that this story is so profound, it didn't just change lives, it changed the world. We'll be watching the new season. You don't want to miss it. Season 5 is now streaming on Prime Video. But it's funny that sometimes looks can be deceiving. I remember Mike and I were doing a peak of the week one time, which was our Wednesday night thing. And I forgot, I can't remember the text we were in. We were talking about how that sometimes you get deceived. And so we asked Randy to wear what he would typically wear at Merrill Lynch, because he's a financial guy, obviously nice suit. And so we had him come up. We called him up front. And so we went through his outfit, and it was kind of embarrassing, but it was funny. And about the cost, and we had looked it up, and then we had the cost of it. Well, then Dad was there, and I had made sure and got like Dad's the full deal. Like he was wearing his camo. At that time we were doing Under Armour camo, but I had brought his coat and everything. So we put all of Dad's stuff on. Then we did a price comparison.
Oh, and Phil's were more.
Guess who has way more money?
Well, it's like as you see some
that Under Armour camo was almost double that.
I
suit.
actually made that point when one time I was at an event. They wouldn't let me in because he thought I was a vagrant.
But you're like, I'm
which has happened on more than
gear.
one occasion.
Yeah, and I made the point somewhere in the argument because he said something about my clothes, and I was like, I will bet you $100 that I have on me right now that my wardrobe costs more than yours. And he's like, I'll take that bet.
And you're going to regret because I'm the best.
And we started
been.
looking it up, and then all of a sudden he's like, well, how about I just let you in and with an apology? But I really wanted that $100. I was like,
well, you think about if you see someone roll up in a $90,000 Audi and you think, oh, pretentious.
Yeah.
But if they roll up in a $100,000 King Ranch Ford pickup truck, you don't think anything about it. But I mean, there's the truck. I mean, those things.
A truck that's right.
Well, my whole point is Jesus didn't look like that. He didn't have anything expensive.
He had nothing.
Ooh,
but
mic drop. Well, get off the Flatbell Hat and the.
You got Joseph of Arimathea. He was a rich man. Jesus was buried in a rich man's tomb. You can be rich and be a Christian.
Well, but I say
Jesus wasn't.
But
you
I
can
use
be.
the comparison of Jesus because I have two categories: Jesus and then everybody else. So I think I just won that argument.
Plus, when you own the universe, you don't
need it.
What do you
That's
need?
all yours anyway.
Which is kind of funny because like the only thing I could relate to that was Alton Howard, who was Corey's grandfather, who was a very wealthy man, but never had money on him. Like we would go someplace, and I was literally an intern at our church. So I was making about $1,000 a month from him, which was a blessing. But we would go someplace, and he wouldn't have any money. Yeah, and he'd be like, You got any cash? And I was like, yes, sir. And I would pull out my little money and pay for the coffee or whatever.
This is a common problem. With
he was paying my salary, but he never carried money.
I've been with a lot of celebrities, baseball players, usually with Willie. And guess who financed whatever we had to do? Me, because none of them had any money.
They don't carry
They had,
cash.
well, I got to talk to my guy.
I got no cash
you
on
know.
me
Well,
right now.
now it's a little more, because
But
Zach does it too.
no,
but
but,
now
yeah.
it's a little more because transactions are what they are.
But
I
it used
get
to be like,
But in the old days,
in
you
the
still
old
had
days,
money.
It was a strategy. You didn't carry cash. I'll grab you later. Or
Yeah,
something.
catch
But it
me
was a
this
way to
time.
get out of
Yeah.
paying for little stuff. Hey, one thing I did want to remind the audience, we are doing this promo, Al, you know about it, heyjack.com. This is a site you guys can log into. You just go to heyjack.com. You can set up a profile. And anytime you book travel, I'm telling you, you're going to get the cheapest prices on the internet. Plus, you're going to get cash back. This is offered just to our audience and just to the Duck Call Room right now. So if you guys want to check it out, you go to heyjack.com. You go into the Unashamed tab, set up a profile, and then start booking travel. I mean, this is the best thing on the internet right now for booking hotels.
Heyjack.com.
Plus, for a limited time, we're doing a giveaway. If you sign up from the Unashamed tab, we're going to draw a name out and give someone $500 in travel voucher from the site, heyjack.com. But I want to push back on the Flatbell hats. I don't think there's anything wrong with them. Although, I wear some Flatbell hats. In fact, a guy called you a narcissist.
Yeah.
One guy made fun of me for wearing my Flatbell hats.
Yeah.
He said he just went after me on
Really? It was a thing.
Oh, you got all mad.
It's not
about
my
it.
thing, but I don't disparage people that do.
No, I don't
Well, y'all
think-
missed the point. I was just saying, if you all look the same.
Yeah, I get you.
I
There's
get-
some
it's-
kind of
it's-
get up
yeah,
that's
it's-
very noticeable. The
Yeah.
high boots and the just weird look to
Yeah.
it. And I'm like,
It's like
What?
fashionable. It's real fashionable.
it's like if I'm gonna be a preacher, this means I'm a cool one.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. That goes against everything I think the Bible says. So there you go. There's my speech.
controversy right there.
There you go.
Controversy
Yeah.
sells.
So if you're listening and that's your get up, that's what we're saying.
Well, I just always say be modest.
I'm okay if you look. I'm a little more open to if you want to. Yeah, it is a little weird. It's not weird that the get up's not weird. I did think it was strange that it was like plug and play, and I think that's
Well, it was weird that it was like state after state. Jase is exactly right because I had the same
I
experience.
make the
It
story.
didn't make
up.
me
It's
think
just
less of anybody.
it's
It's
just
just
what
Well,
it
I
is.
actually think though we're at an interesting moment in our culture, particularly when it comes to church, that I think we're at the end of that. I think people like our church is kind of a refuge for different groups of people. One of the groups I would say are those who kind of got to the end of that movement and just were like, man, what are we doing here? This is like a plug and play.
No, I agree.
You know-
There's a lot of conferences now that are bursting forth where they're kind of embracing the idea that we may disagree on some things, but we're going to come together. Well, that's rare.
Well,
Yeah,
plus
I can see
I don't
that.
know how it is around the country. Although I've been hearing about it. I know it's huge here, and Zach was just a part of one. A spiritual wave is what I call them. They'll roll through, and I call them Holy Spirit moments. But it's retreats are the thing that a lot of people have found their connection to God, Christ, and community at the same time. And that's usually at a campground somewhere, someplace out in the middle of nowhere. I mean,
super dialed back. The one I went on, and you're not supposed to talk about it too much because
Right.
they got a whole things I'll say that were meaningful that I think I could share.
And why is it private?
Well,
it's part of
they're
the.
trying to make you experience it
Yeah.
without knowing what happened. It's like not telling a movie. You know?
Oh, my
There's a
goodness.
girl
Well,
goes
we're
out.
just exchanging
I
one
s-
Christianese for another. Oh, we have a secret thing. I just think if you're
The
going
word
to go
is-
public for Jesus, go public for Jesus. If you have something working, hey, guess what? Pass it on. Don't keep it a secret.
It's not. You're not keeping it a secret. What you're doing is you're inviting people into an experience.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was getting into, and you're kind of out of your element. I was a little uncomfortable going into it.
But I'm saying there's a lot of people
But there's a
that
hunger.
are being introduced.
Yeah,
to
I think
Christ.
there's a hunger. There's a hunger happening across the globe right now of people that are getting to the end of kind of what they thought would sustain them in there. And I don't. It's crazy what they're seeking out and they're finding Jesus. And it reminds me of that Acts 17 passage that He's not far from each one of us. And
Yeah.
I got invited this past week to a testimony night, which we love testimonies growing
Yeah.
up in the way we grew up, hearing them all the time. But in Asheville, it's not as common. That culture is not as common for people to openly share their story. And so Jill had met this girl on Instagram that lived in Asheville, because I talked a lot about like New Age people coming to Christ in our area at our church a lot, and it's And this other girl, not affiliated with anything we're doing, was on Instagram and had this viral clip where she was like, "What's with all the New Age people coming to know Jesus?" And she was a former New Age person.
I don't even know what New Age is.
It's like kind of like Buddhist, Hindu, kind of like hippie, kind of like
kind of a one with the universe vibe.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't refer to themselves.
I like the name New Age because really, like when you see eternal life, translated. I mean, when you go back to the Greek, it was kind of this present age, age to come.
Right.
That was the Jewish mindset of that. When we see eternal life, it leads us to think about all kinds of things. That's why people got into just like a bodiless existence through eternity, because
which is kind of what he's describing.
It's kind of like that, but
convert to energy. And,
very energy healers and some Wiccan culture, like kind of witches and things like that. They're all kind of
to me. They
your
need to
chakra and your parts.
They
of
need
crystals.
to hear about the bodily resurrection. I mean, the last podcast when we closed, you weren't here because you had an emergency.
On the last podcast.
I thought you had to go to the bathroom, but it turned out
you just walked
it was
out like I did. We didn't ask you.
No, he had a meeting.
Oh, it was a meeting.
You talking about embarrassing. I was like, you can't wait 2 minutes for a meeting?
But well, when I left the podcast, I could not wait 30 more seconds for my meeting. I had a problem.
You were forgiven. But anyway, I read.
I was gone for 45 seconds.
I want to share this to take you back because I was breaking down that word, the flesh, that we're born into. The word that that some translate sinful
you were
nature.
tracking. I liked where you were
But
going.
Luke 24, I thought it was very profound. After his resurrection, when he said, "Look at my hands and my feet," it is I myself, touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones as you see I have. Well, that word flesh, same word.
Yeah.
This is post-resurrection.
Yeah.
Well, if it was something negative, completely.
Jase, I know that summer camps, particularly Christ-centered summer camps, were a big part of your life, correct?
My entire life. I've seen a lot of good things happen in the woods when young people are talking about Jesus.
Which is why we love this ministry and what they're doing here with these summer camps. The Tomorrow Club summer camps are more than just a fun experience, although they are fun. They are often the beginning of a lifelong journey with Jesus. And so many of these kids meet Christ for the very first time at camp, and then they go on to grow their faith in the local Tomorrow Clubs. In fact, in the small village of Sabadlo, Georgia, a young girl named Sonia found hope and purpose at a Tomorrow Club's camp. Touched by the love that she experienced, Sonia invited her mom, Anna, who had a long battle with depression and some family struggles. She invited her to the local church. Anna encountered healing and found faith in Christ there. So today, she and Sonia both serve together as Tomorrow Club leaders, helping others discover the same hope that they once received. And this one story is just a glimpse of how God uses these simple camps to spark deep, lasting transformation in families, churches, in fact, in entire communities, especially in remote and often forgotten places. Our goal is to reach 3,000 kids through 30 summer camps this year. That is why we're inviting our Unashamed listeners to join us in bringing Christ-centered discipleship to 3,000 kids this summer through 30 Bible camps around the world. Unashamed listeners have already raised $11,000, but we still need to raise $19,000 to reach our goal. Just $1,000 sponsors a full 5-day camp for 100 kids. I mean, that's insane. Any amount you donate will help. Sponsor a day camp for $200 or send 10 kids to camp for $100. Go to tomorrowclubs.org/30camps or simply text 30 camps to 44321 to give now. That's tomorrowclubs.org/30 camps or text 30 camps to 44321.
So my point is, yes, we have, if you want to call it sinful nature, okay. But when you were born, everything was fine, or Jesus wouldn't have become a human, and he certainly wouldn't refer to his new body as the same word as flesh and bones as you see I have. Well, we know that flesh was different because it had been changed, because it's 2,000 years later, he's still alive.
Yeah.
With it. So I'm just saying there's other factors involved that's going to lead you to committing sins. That's why Galatians 5:19 says the acts of the sinful nature are obvious.
Yeah.
Focus on the acts and obvious.
Yeah.
And I think it'll keep you from misreading what's happening here in John 9, which is they were assuming, oh, is this guy sinful from birth? Or even we use the one in David. So
Well,
I was kind of piggybacking to that because that's where we left off.
Well, and I've always used that verse, the acts of the sinful nature or the flesh are obvious, as a way to combat sometimes when people like to do what I call detective work of sin building, where you connect A to B to C to come up with D to find out this brother's in a sinful situation. I was like, you're overthinking it too much. You get into these things with the church police. Instead of they're pretty obvious. You can just read them.
Yeah.
They're just there. And you can characterize a life by that, so you don't have to build cases for sinful.
Well, one of the
behaviors.
things I told you about my son calling me the other night was excited about Bible study because I've taught him. I was like, some words when you read the Bible, you think they mean the same thing that another word that could be translated into English the same. You just assume they're all the same. And so I showed him. I've done it many times on the podcast here. You can look those up on the Bible Hub. Commentary, Greek lexicon, and it'll show you every place where that word is mentioned in the New Testament. Right. You can do the same thing for the Old Testament using the Hebrew lexicon. Mm-hmm. And it's so shocking sometimes where words are translated into English, and it's like, oh, that's not the same word. Yeah. And I did one time on here about the word nature. So the time it's used in Ephesians 3, Ephesians 2, 3. Well, it's a different word from that word sinful nature that's translated in English. This one's only mentioned I think it's a few times, over a dozen. But it's this, I wanted to give you this same context of what we're talking about. And you remember it's in Ephesians when he says, as for you, you were dead, this is verse 1, in your transgressions and sins. So just think the acts of the sinful nature, but he describes this. You were dead in your transgressions and sins in which you used to live.
Yeah.
When you followed the ways of this world and the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient.
Which we quoted that talking about.
We did. Yeah. There are these celestial beings, and I'm using that plural.
Yeah.
That have that didn't want to do their vocation for God, in which they were created for.
Correct.
And we don't know all the details of what they're supposed to be doing, but we know when they lose that, they are hurled to the earth and became problems for humans.
That's right.
And so, but then it kind of describes what this sinful life was. It says all of us lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our sinful nature. Yeah. Well, there's that flesh. So that one is the same one that Galatians 5, but it's also the same word that is used to describe Jesus becoming flesh and post-resurrection.
Yeah.
So, and you tend to think, well, what's your point? Well, you remember in Hebrews 4 where Jesus said he was tempted, but was without sin. So he was in the body, he was tempted, but he did not sin.
Right.
He was a human. It was not sinful to become human is my statement that I want to make. But then I want to show you how this works. So it says we gratify the cravings of our sinful nature. And I would argue that these are all acts that we acted on the cravings, to go to Galatians 5:19. But then watch what it says. Like the rest, we were by nature. Well, you would assume that's the same word as the sinful nature, but it's not. You say, well, how do you know? Because I looked it up in the Greek lexicon. It's a different word.
Yeah.
Means something totally different. And here that word nature is like association. So, and I'll give you an example. I did this on our podcast, probably 100 podcasts ago. So when you look at 2 Peter 1, look, his divine power has given us everything we need for life and godliness through our knowledge of him who called us.
Yeah, it's in verse 4. Keep reading.
Okay, by his own glory and goodness. Through these he's given us his very great and precious promises so that through them you may participate in the divine nature. Yeah. Well, this is the same word as that nature. And so you say, what is it? Well, it's association. If you're out there following the spirit of the evil one, then you are by nature, that association going to be, what's the second part of that verse? Because of, verse 3 of Ephesians 2. Like the rest, we were by nature objects of wrath. Well, what's going to happen if you're participating with the evil one?
It's the natural consequences.
Right.
It's the natural consequences.
Which
But what I'm saying is, people who assume that that's the first verse, people that assume that it's the first phrase say, "Oh, well, you were born by nature to be an object of wrath." Well, I got a problem with that.
Yeah.
You see, and now I know why.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, when you look at what the word means, you're like, oh, wait, that's a different word. It's like whatever your association, whatever who you're in bed with,
Right.
the evil one or God Almighty. Well, you participate in the divine nature if you've surrendered to God. And that's what this whole thing is about in Ephesians 2, is these two kingdoms, these two entities.
Mm-hmm.
One of them's lying, one of them's telling the truth, and you're going to get the consequences from whichever one you're in.
Right. It'd be like saying if you were a hothead, by nature, you're going to have a hard time getting along with people.
Well, exactly.
I mean, because you're a hothead. It's not because you were just born and you can't get along with people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what you're talking about, which is
well,
good.
I think it relates to John 9 because this problem about trying to blame somebody from birth or making them sinful at birth, I just think that's a dangerous
Well, and I think it's really interesting, and I'm fixing to read this text, so we'll kind of read the whole story, because where this story goes proves your point, Jase, because what starts out as something that everybody should have been super happy about because the work of God was displayed, but instead it became the biggest investigation you've ever seen, and for a lot of different reasons. So let me read the text, and then we'll go back and kind of break down some of the stuff, because there's a lot of stuff in here. We spent a couple of podcasts just talking how people get so many things wrong out of this story. So verse 1, as he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. And I told you why I think that thread is linked in why John put the story here. His disciples asked him, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And so they believed in this divine retribution we've been talking about. Jesus says, neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus, but this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. As long as it is day, we must do the work of him who sent me. Night is coming when no one can work. While I am in the world, I am the light of the world, which we'll talk more about that when we come back. Having said this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on the man's eyes. Go, he told him, wash in the pool of Siloam. That word means sent, Siloam. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. So he was cured. His neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg? Some claimed that he was. Others said, no, he only looks like him. But he himself insisted, I am the man. So a little bit of an identity question here. How then were your eyes open? They demanded. He replied, the man they called Jesus made some mud, put it on my eyes. He told me to go to Siloam and wash, so I went and washed, and then I could see. Where is this man? They asked him. I don't know, he said. So they brought him to the Pharisees. They brought to the Pharisees the man who had been blind. So now this is where the investigation started. Now the day on which Jesus had made the mud and opened the man's eyes was a Sabbath. Uh-oh. Here we go again.
Don't mess around with the Sabbath.
You got a Sabbath problem. Therefore, the Pharisees who also asked him how he had received his sight. He put mud on my eyes, the man said, and I washed. Now I can see. Some of the Pharisees said, well, this man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath. I can't help but laugh because, he healed the guy, but, But others asked, how can a sinner do such miraculous signs? So they were divided. Finally, they turned again to the blind man and said, what have you to say about it? It was your eyes he opened. The man replied, he is a prophet. The Jews still did not believe that he had been blind, and they were even questioning that, and had received his sight until they sent for the man's parents. And they said, watch this, how this story unfolds. Is this your son? They asked. Is this the one you say was born blind? How is it now that he can see? We know he is our son, the parents answered, and we know he was born blind. But how he can see or who opened his eyes, we don't know. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself. So they punted. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews, for already the Jews had decided that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Christ or the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. Now we're getting down to the heart of it. That was why his parents said, he is of age, ask him. Just think about how sad that is. A second time, they summoned the man who had been blind. So we're going to go back to this guy. Give glory to God, they say, which is interesting. It means tell us the truth. We know this man is a sinner. And he replied, whether he is a sinner or not, I don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see. You talking about,
That's a mic drop moment.
that's a bumper sticker. So I jokingly say when I go out and speak, because there's a lot less of me now, that PhD Weight Loss wanted to have some guinea pigs from the Unashamed podcast, and I was the fattest pig. So I got the gig. And it's been great. 80% of dropping fat weight comes from what you eat. And I found the perfect person to help me, and that's Dr. Ashley Lucas. She's the founder of PhD Weight Loss. She's been on our podcast. She's a registered dietitian with a PhD in sports nutrition and chronic disease. And I believe this gives her a unique insight into helping you understand how your body can burn fat. That's why thousands of clients, including me, have had success. The program teaches you what to eat, it teaches when to eat, and it works on your relationship with food so that you can take weight off for life. If you're watching this on YouTube, here's the picture of me at the beginning. Here I am some 23 weeks later, over 60 pounds down. No gimmicks, no pills, no injections, no awful side effects. And I love that I'm not hungry. It's a high-protein diet. It's low on carbs. They help you by providing 80% of your weekly food at no extra cost. So check these guys out. Join me on my weight loss journey. Schedule your one-on-one consultation today by calling 864-644-1900, or you can visit myphdweightloss.com. That's 864-644-1900. Tell them Al Robertson sent you.
Yeah, the guy there, you think about like when you read that, I was thinking of that Charles Spurgeon quote. He said something like that the gospel, and I love apologetics, which is defending the claims of the Bible.
It's always been one of your best seasons, I think.
It's been one of my best seasons, Jase. It's my apologetic season. I love that, but I love defending the truths of the gospel, right? But he said the gospel.
Sometimes the seasons close.
They close off.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
All right, what did he say?
He said that the gospel, I'm paraphrasing, I'm probably going to get it somewhat wrong, but the gospel does not need to be defended.
Yeah.
It is a caged lion that needs to be unleashed.
Yeah, that's good.
And I love that because you see here, like this man has no apologetic. He has no, he's not carrying the water for Jesus. I mean, he's like, I don't, here's what I know. I was blind. Now I see.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Deal with it.
But I think what's crazy, though, is if you read this from a different perspective, he didn't even believe in him. You know,
Right.
This is a strange miracle because he just heals him. And he's like, even the terminology there, they're like, who healed you? What was the first thing he said? Is like, they call him
The man
Jesus.
they call Jesus.
The man they call Jesus. Well, that's not very personalized there.
No.
So that's why I think this evolves as it comes along.
Then he says, you're right. Then he says a prophet. Well, he's got to, because he's thinking he's got to be something. I mean, like
not a believer.
Yeah.
But the belief doesn't happen until verse 35.
Until we get down to the true
with Jesus.
seed.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I think it's important to know how this process worked because when Jesus heard, because they're persecuting him. Well, he's the first persecuted follower of Jesus, and he wasn't even following
wasn't a
Jesus.
follower.
He was just a result of Jesus.
But his honesty is overwhelming here because he literally doesn't have an agenda. Like
Agendaless.
He's like, I'm not.
I came to the same conclusion. Yeah. That's why he was just telling the truth.
There's no Christianese language. He's not talking about what seasons.
Well,
I mean,
his parents even bailed. They were like, you know, yes, he was born blind, but you know that's all we got. You'll have to ask.
But they were in fear, you know, of being persecuted,
losing their spot.
That's I think this last paragraph is important because when Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, which I love this part because remember what we've said, Jesus is showing the character of God. He was concerned about that.
Yeah.
Because now this guy, he healed him. He's happy, but everybody should be happy. There's a guy that can cure blindness with some mud, which I think people have always asked, well, what's the deal with spitting? You know, people don't like talking about this.
Right.
You know, they do these Christianese jokes, but it's for baseball players. They're spitting all over the way. Don't spit on the ground. But I love this because somebody who was born with redneck tendencies, and I'm like, he did a miracle by spitting on the ground because people think that that's not socially acceptable. Now in Louisiana, we don't have that problem. But if you go to New York, and spit on the sidewalk or whatever, they're like,
what are you doing?
I'm looking around. Everybody's.
But even in Louisiana, if you spit on me, we got a problem.
Well, and if you spit on me, we got a problem. But I'm saying the fact that he did that, which is so socially
awkward.
Yeah. And I think it's a picture back to creation. I mean, he made man out of dust.
Mm-hmm. Mud.
So he's making
mud pies.
Yeah, we're mud pies. So he's basically taking the ground with his spit, which his spit is coming from another place. And literally, he came from heaven. And he regenerated. I don't know a better word. He made that right.
Yeah.
Which shows you, I think it's a glimpse into this new humanity and this new creation that this is driving this whole train, that everything's going to be made right.
Yeah.
Everything wrong. And
to see it, like we one time we went on a medical mission trip to Mexico, and one of our guys is the eye doctor that went with us. And there were these people that came in out of the hills, and I mean, you talk about remote. And this super old man was there, and we had these glasses, and they're trying to match them. Obviously, it's not like it is in America where you just, they test your eyes. And so he tried on these glasses, and for the first time could see clearly, and he just started weeping.
Yeah.
And I just remember us sitting there thinking, I mean, we just watched it. In his mind, that was a miracle. I mean, our mind was, it's just.
Well, have you seen the ones with the cochlear implants for the kids? For the first, or even as simple as like someone's colorblind and they put on these glasses and can see color for the first time.
Oh, right.
And they just weep.
Right. And it just is so touching. So you're right, Jase. When you read this, you're talking about miss it, which is the whole point, really.
Well, that's why I wanted to read this in.
Well, hang on before you read it. Let me read this little interim part. Then
can I say something before you do that? The interim part that we're moving to, it is interesting that how they change when they can't corner the man up in whether once it gets to like, okay, he did it. Like first it's like, did this really happen?
Yeah, was he really blind?
Yeah, and he's like, I don't know if he's a sinner. I know one thing, I was blind, but now I see. And then they moved to the question, well, how did he do it? How did he?
Got to get a process.
First, it was when did he do it on the Sabbath? Yeah. Then did he do it? Now it's like, well, how did he do it?
Yeah, now we got a process. All right, let me read this, Jason. Then I want you to read the last. So then they asked him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" Is that to your point? He answered, "I've told you already, and you do not listen." So not only could they not see, they can't hear. Why do you want to hear it again? Oh, and this line is so good. Do you want to become his disciples too? Then they hurled insults at him and said, "You are this fellow's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but as for this fellow, we don't even know where he comes from." And the man says, "Now that's remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners." And he's going back to the original.
What's the common theme?
Exactly.
They had a theme, which is what I tried to address. It was the wrong thing.
Wrong theme.
Yeah.
Including this guy.
Well, and also note that when they said that they followed Moses, they're disciples of Moses, and that God had spoken to Moses.
Yeah.
The irony is just go back one chapter in John 8,
right.
when the I am passage.
Yeah, exactly.
Like at the burning bush, the one speaking to Moses was the one standing right there before the miracle.
He could have said before Moses was born, I am. So he listens to the godly man who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. So he kind of has a bad theology, but he gets to the right point. To this they replied, "You were steeped in sin at birth," Jase, to your point, How dare you lecture us? And then they threw him out. So I wanted to read that part because and now he's thrown out. All right.
Yeah. So then Jesus heard they had thrown him out. And when he found him, he said, do you believe in the Son of Man? I mean, so there's your next question.
Yeah.
In our question.
I'm going to add that to the list.
Well, it's a good one.
It's a good one.
I'm telling you, take these questions. There's something powerful about
When we get to the end.
When you single out these questions, even out of context.
When we get to the end of the book, we're just going to have those questions.
You're like, do you believe in the
down.
Son of Man? I mean, what? I wouldn't have known how to respond to that, but I do think context is important here. And in the Jewish mindset, most everyone there
had read Daniel.
They were familiar with that phrase.
Zach, one of the blessings of Mom being with us is that she loves dogs, and we have a lot of community, what I call compound dogs. There's 4 of them that are around quite frequently, but Rue, which is the first dog we got, she likes to lay in a chair right next to Mom so she can reach right over there for that emotional support. And so we like to take care of them.
Most of us live routine lives, work, home, family, repeat, day in, day out. It doesn't change much. But what about your dog? Whether you notice it or not, your dog is changing. At some point, they are going to start slowing down. Maybe they already are. And dogs are important. They really are a companion for the people that we love and, man's best friend. Well, we can't stop the world from turning, but we can do something about the way that your dog feels as it turns. Ruff Greens is not a replacement for your dog's food. It's the live nutrients missing from your dog's food. Your dog has always been there for you, so now it's your turn to be there for your dog.
I know Rue Baby loves a little Ruff Green seasoning on her food.
Yeah, Lisa says they get excited about the sound of the bag coming out of the pantry. And you know what? She's talked about their healthier skin, shinier coat, more active, energetic, better mobility, improved digestion, all the things. So fetch a free Jumpstart trial bag for your dog today. Just cover shipping. Call them at 214-RUFF-DOG or go to ruffgreens.com and use discount code Unashamed. That's RUFF greens.com, discount code Unashamed, or call 214-RUFF-DOG. Ruff Greens, a healthy change for your changing dog. Ruff, ruff.
I tried to think of an illustration, but I couldn't think of one. Like in our culture, where there was some famous prediction or phrase that everyone knows about, but they immediately thought of that. Oh, God is sending a Son of Man, Daniel 2, Daniel 7. And so I know that's where his mind went. But he said, who is he, sir? The man asked, which kind of assuming, yeah, I'm familiar, but who is it?
Yeah.
Tell me so that I may believe in him. So that tells you he was familiar with the Daniel 2. And that culture, when they heard Son of Man, and maybe we should read Daniel 7. I think it's Daniel 7, 14?
Yeah.
So then Jesus says, you have now seen him. In fact, he is the one speaking with you. Well, now we have a light bulb moment. Because this liberator of Israel, this king that's coming, who's establishing an everlasting kingdom, the Son of Man, riding on the clouds. Oh, that's why I'm healed. Because you got to remember, everybody else was doing an investigation. But if you were the one blind and you didn't have a medical procedure, I don't think spit and mud would qualify for anybody's medical procedure that actually could work.
Even in the first
This is like a home remedy that cured my blindness, and I was blind from birth. I mean, come on now.
Yeah.
I mean, no, would you even try it? I mean, he was so desperate.
But Jase, think about what Jesus told him. Think about the power of the moment. He said, he didn't say you're talking to him. He said, yeah, now you've seen him. Well, this man hadn't seen anything ever.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And I was, the reason I brought up the social part of it was if you're so desperate and you're so miserable, because there's people today that are born blind, and you just realize how, when you read this story, how thankful I am that I can see. I mean, Can you imagine? But you're not worried about, oh, that's gross, you spit on the ground, because most people, I would say most people, that if you had a problem and you came to me and it's like, look, I know how to fix this. I'm going to spit on the ground, I'm gonna make some mud, and I'm going to put it on your eye. Most people, they're not going to allow you to do that.
I'm good.
But
and now, what you wonder, did Jesus go through? Because it doesn't say. It just said he did it.
But when
was he giving them a play-by-play?
You're a beggar, and you just think about his life.
Yeah.
Desperation is an understatement.
Like you said, he had been ignored his whole life.
Well, now you tie in, the Luke version of the Beatitudes and the blessed are the broken and the crushed and the poor in spirit and all this desperation. Well, blessed are you. Well, this is he was in need.
Yeah.
And that was the problem with the Pharisees. They got it all figured out. They weren't in need, and that's why they couldn't even see it. They don't need anything.
This is why he says, I have told you already, but you would not listen. And that's the heart of the Pharisee. You see the same thing in Mark 3, by the way, where Jesus also heals on the Sabbath. He heals the man with the withered hand, and he puts it in the cloak. And they're like, you can't do that on the Sabbath. And Jesus is like, basically, I am Lord of the Sabbath. But if you look at what, and then at the end of that passage, it talks about the blaspheming of the Holy Spirit. And I think it has a lot to do with the heart of these guys right here, is that they're seeing the obvious. And so this man who doesn't have an agenda is just like, he's going kind of where the evidence leads. And the Pharisees are like, Jesus is like, I'm telling you, you're not listening. And at the end of it, they said, well, are we blind? And he said, yeah. Basically, no, you actually see, and that's why you're guilty, because you do see, and you're putting the fingers in the ear, and you're saying, I'm not listening. So Jesus, their problem was not that they weren't receiving the correct information or revelation from who God was. The problem is that they were receiving the revelation, and they were rejecting it, which I think is what it ultimately is. They're just saying, we're not going to listen to truth.
Yeah.
Our own autonomy.
Which I think is the heart of the whole passage.
I think it's more, they weren't listening to truth, but they also weren't thrilled by Jesus. They weren't thrilled by this. And so that shows that whatever you're into, which is thrilling you, you're, the little g God of power or whatever idolatry you want to make of this from the Pharisees. I have a little thing I want to do on this for the next podcast because I know we're almost out of time. But because there's an interesting phrase, I don't want to get into it because we're almost out of time. So we'll do that next time about the Pharisees' mindset. Because there's an interesting passage. It's in Luke 7. It came to me now. Where it said the Pharisees didn't believe. The people who had been baptized by John, they embraced Jesus. But the ones that weren't, he was talking about the Pharisees. He said the Pharisees. He's like, oh no, they rejected it. Because they had just, this whole movement, they had distanced themselves.
Oh, right.
Because these weren't the right people.
Yeah, they were threatened.
They looked at John the Baptist, and they're like, hey, the kingdom is at hand. They said, no.
I think it goes back to what you said, one of y'all said it, the beggar had nothing to lose and everything to gain. Yep. The Pharisees had nothing to gain and everything to lose in their mind, which is, I think, the way this ends is extremely powerful. I just want to read that last verse.
Well, we need to read it. I left off on 38.
Yeah, read the rest
of
the way.
So when he says you've now seen him, in fact, he is the one speaking with you. The man said, now, just look where he's come on this one day. Lord, I believe. And he worshiped him. Well, it's like the conversion came way later.
But the conversion came because he saw him and said, I believe. The Pharisees saw him and said, I don't believe. Because Jesus' point is, you would not be condemned.
Right.
Unless you saw. But you see, the problem is that you're not blind. You did see me.
You did see
and you rejected me. That's why you're guilty.
Read the rest of it.
To go on from that, because then Jesus said, which this is very important, I think, for judgment I have come into this world so that the blind will see and those who see will become blind. Which you think, well, I thought he didn't come in to condemn the world, but to save it. But part of that light shining is judgment because it's revealing your heart. It's like this guy's heart said, oh, but then it's also judgment because the Pharisees' hearts were revealed and it wasn't godly. They were not.
It's back to choice.
Yeah. So some Pharisees who were with him heard him say this and asked, what? Are we blind too? And to Zach's point, Jesus said, if you were blind, you would not be guilty of sin, but now you claim you can see, your guilt remains.
Oh, that's
You're not going to be able to see without Jesus.
That's so good, but we're out
Hey,
of time.
you know what? We got through an entire chapter of the Bible.
We read
in
it.
one
We read a
podcast.
chapter.
We
in one
must
podcast.
revisit, though, at the next podcast. We'll
There's
revisit.
no long how long we'll stay here. We'll see you next time on Unashamed. Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube. And be sure to click the little bell and choose all notifications to watch every episode.